The Tonewood debate. Wow, are we really going to go back there and open that can of worms again? Does the wood that an electric guitar is made out of affect the tone of the guitar through an amplifier? Well, yep, we are revisiting the subject today because now we have your definitive take on the matter. And as you know, I don't listen to anyone on the interweb except for my incredibly intelligent viewers and subscribers. You have spoken, and in my view, you've nailed it. Plain and simple. So today we're going to put this issue to bed, finally, for my channel at least. No doubt there'll be many differing opinions on the subject, and everybody has one. However, I'm going with the majority who voted on my recent poll. So let's finally put the Tonewood debate to bed. This has been a hot topic of debate for over, 7 years now. And I think it started about 7 years ago with the video by Rob Chapman entitled Proof: Wood Affects Electric Guitar Tone, Chapman Special Run Swampash ML1. And then the response videos came thick and fast from Scott Grove and the like. And however, I think that it actually started way before all that nonsense in the YouTube guitar community with one of my favourite builders of all time, Paul Reed-Smith. For many years now, Paul has argued the point that the type of wood a guitar is made out of, and more importantly, how seasoned and dry that wood is, impacts the tone of the electric guitar massively. We've all seen the videos where he knocks on the piece of wood to check the tone and to pick the bits he feels will be best for making an amazing instrument. Well, when you factor in the law of diminishing returns, it's actually quite easy to go along with PRS on this topic, as when you're charging such premium prices for your instruments, then the smallest detail can be important and vitally will affect the price that the builder will charge for that detail. However, I think it's important not to conflate a few $100s difference in price for alternate woods on a guitar costing thousands and the total disparities of the wood types in electric guitars only costing in the hundreds of dollars. At that lower price point, there are many variables that affect the tone. Over the years, many YouTubers have chipped in and it all got very silly at one point with insults and lies flying around like a full-on war of words. We were supposed to have an opinion and pick a camp to support. You were either a Tonewood believer or it was your duty to round on them, likening them to flat earthers. Well, one of my favourite tests was from Tim Sway, who made a fixed neck and pickup that he's slotted into identical size and shape body woods to see what difference they made. I think his results sparked more debate, but I found it pretty conclusive. I can hear very subtle differences, but much of that could be to do with his playing and in Tim's fingers. I decided not to plough in with everyone else, and so I've not made a video on the subject until all the silliness died down. If you're a regular here, you'll know that I'm far from a drama channel and I'm not often interested in controversy, just great guitar related content. However, I have a total respect for my viewers and supporters, so I thought I would poll the question on my channel and see what you guys had to say on the matter now. After all, as far as I'm concerned, you guys always have the final word. So let's check out what you think. As always, you guys always give me what I would consider to be the most intelligent and intellectual responses to all of these sorts of questions. So I asked you, and these are some of the comments that you came up with. ShockMe1994 says,
lots of accomplished musicians have played Eddie's guitars. None of them sounded like Eddie.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and none of them did sound like Eddie, although it's very easy to try and take somebody off, but it doesn't always work, does it? John ZD351 wasn't very happy. He said,
I ended up going with fingers because without the fingers, the wood and pickups just sit there quietly. But really, Mike, these surveys, where we can only pick one option, when the true answer is a combination, you're messing with my head.
I didn't intend to mess with your head, brother. I just intended to make you answer the question rather than fudge the answer. But I think you certainly went with fingers, didn't you? Raging Chimera says,
Many things contribute to tone, but when you hear a really good player and say, wow, he has great tone, it's in his fingers.
I think that's a point that a lot of people are making. Count Dunkelheit Covers says,
Wood, especially in acoustic instruments, affects the tone of the guitar more than any other aspect. Electric instruments, however, have a tone based in the pickups of the guitar.
Good point. I think that given that it's all electrical and electronic, that makes a lot of sense. My buddy Aaron from the Orbis band says,
Where's the all of above option? I did fingers, but mainly because of the competency of one's hands will certainly affect what it sounds like. I love you, brother.
Yeah, I love you too, Aaron. And I think, again, you chose fingers. Music Therapy Laz says, and I think he meant to say,
I said fingers, so I really meant playing and art. You know my motto, right? The secret to tone is mind, but the feel comes from the heart. Put them together and make music using your fingers.
Once more, another one saying fingers. Ian Vincent, now this is quite a long one and it's worth reading through because I think he's got some really good points. Ian says,
Interesting question. I'm inclined to say all of the above. For example, I believe what gives a Les Paul its buttery smooth tone is not the pickups. They pick up what's already there rather than adding to the sound. You can swap out the pickups and you still know it's a Les Paul. That aspect of the tone already exists before you plug in the guitar. I would make similar comments surrounding a Telecaster and its distinctive twang. I believe the construction of the guitar plays a huge role in this. I'm more inclined to believe the bridge pickup plays a huge role in this more so than the wood itself. But I've never tried installing alternative bridges on guitars to properly experiment. I think the role wood itself plays is limited, but to suggest it plays no role I think is unfair. Something of a different density clearly will vibrate differently, and this will have an effect, but it depends on how many effects you're using and what you'll actually notice. I think the thickness of the neck makes more of a difference than the body for sustain. I would also throw the length of the cable into the mix here too. For example, if you use a pickup with a lower output, this will make a huge difference. If you try to use effects, however, it's less likely relevant to the raw tone you'll get if you just plugged in to the effects return of your amp per se. Undoubtedly though, using a higher output pickup will accentuate any effects you apply to your signal chain. In terms of fingers, it really depends what you're playing. Yes, there are players with distinctive finger sounds, but at the same time, if you ask them to play a distorted power chord chorus with the same amp and settings, they're all going to sound exactly the same. I think being as smooth as you can is always something to aim for and will make a huge difference for solos. And if you're like me and know you're not perfect at putting a noise gate in front of your signal chain, will work wonders here too, potentially even adding some compression, although I know many also consider it a dirty word. I'm also inclined to believe that much of what I've talked about makes not a blind bit of difference with active pickups too in terms of how the guitar's built, but fingers are still very relevant with active pickups.
Well, I think Ian made a very long but very valid point there. Raymond878 just says,
Well, that solves that.
Sion Jones says,
The only way to know for sure if Tonewood is indeed a myth would be a simple setup of a string strung across two different pieces of wood. You keep the length and tension of the string the same. You then measure the profile of the sound with a spectrum analyzer. You could do this acoustically or by the output of a pickup. My hunch is there would be variation, but maybe not significant. There are lots of variables that may be hard to control, like the natural variation of wood, impedance of the pickups, maybe the magnetic flux density inside the pickup core. There's so many variables in both wood and electrodynamics of magnetic pickup.
I think you got a really good point. Fat Philosopher says,
Tonewood is a myth PRS uses on suckers to make them buy overpriced guitars.
well, I'm not sure about that, Fat Philosopher, but I have mentioned that PRS probably are the root cause of the Tonewood debate. Brad Guitar Miller says,
Ended going fingers, but pickups help.
they certainly do, my friend, and nobody can argue that point. Graham Hunt said,
Best example for me, Jeff Beck or Chris Buck. Give them a Strat or a Tele or a Les Paul, whatever. You can tell their unique tone through their fingers.
another vote for fingers. Andrew Lamachia says,
What makes a car go fast? Engine, fuel or driver?
yes, okay, I know that you didn't like the idea of not being able to put multiple choices, but that was the whole point. Colin Traveller says,
Pickups, amplifier is how sound is achieved and how it's used.
very good point. The Mustache Girl Band says,
Fingers for sure.
I think that we're seeing a bit of a trend here. Perry Hellion 77 says,
Most folks have been cured of the silly Tonewood scam by now for solid body electric guitars with magnetic pickups. It's a completely different story for acoustic instruments, of course. ES335, etc. are actually solid body guitars.
Dave the Bass says,
Fingers! I could just pick up Justin Chancellor's bass and play a tall bass line, or pick up Malcolm Young's Gretsch and play an AC/DC rhythm part, but it wouldn't sound like Malcolm or Justin. I have Seymour quarter pounders in my P bass and play the same finger style, 2 fingers, heavy attack. But even though I can't play a maiden bass line and do a really good Steve Harris impression, it sounds like me, not Steve.
I think that's a very good point. I think fingers are certainly pulling ahead here. Cody Morrison says,
Speaker, mic or IR matters the most.
I think you have a point there. Bam Mozzie says,
Everything!
okay, Bam Mozzie, I know it is a little combination of everything, but the point was I needed you to vote. Graham Campbell also says,
All of the above.
and I know it's a mix, but I just wanted to get the definitive answer. Hurricane Moon certainly has a definitive answer. He says
fingers for sure.
And finally, Car Guy 47 says
Tone.
So there we have it. And what was the final result, you might ask? 631 of you voted, I should say, that Tonewood only represented 9% of the effect on the output tone. The pickups were 34% of the tone, and with a vast majority, as always, my friends, you are so astute and wise. You've said, 57% of you, that fingers are the most important thing. So the tone comes from the fingers, followed by the pickups, and lastly, a small but noticeable effect from the wood. So there we have it, and I'm going to respect your voting and comments entirely. So the definitive answer is that wood has a 9% guitar effect on guitar tone, the pickups 34, and most importantly of all, 57% of tone comes from the fingers of the player. I actually couldn't agree more with these percentages, and will quote them to anyone asking me the question in future, so thank you for your insight and intellect. I totally agree that playing comes from the heart and the soul and is translated through skill in the fingers. To highlight this point, I've often cited the video where I've seen Joe Satriani play on a really cheap, badly set up guitar in some kid's bedroom, and he still sounds just like Satch. What more proof do we need, folks? Tone is in the fingers mainly, affected a little bit by the pickups, and only very slightly by the type of wood it's built from. Solved! So if you've enjoyed this video, please do all usual things the algorithm likes: thumbs, comments, subscribe, click the bell, but only if you want to. It's just me asking, as it really helps the channel. So thanks if you do, and if you do any of that good stuff. Also, if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching to the end, and let me know you made it by including the phrase "tone is all in the fingers" in your comments. I read and enjoy them all, and I respond to as many as I can, and while I'm doing that, I'll be creating the best content that I can for you, and I'll be back with that just as soon as I can. And in the meantime, as always, my good friends, you take good care.